The truth. People just want the truth. You know, everybody loves talking about Austin's barbecue, live music, Barton Springs. Heck, I talk about it all the time on this channel, but living here is a totally different story, one that even a lot of locals don't fully understand. From hidden costs that could wreck your budget to daily quirks that could blindside you, these are the real things about living in Austin that people don't tell you. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you're gonna know whether Austin is a dream or a deal breaker. All right, kicking off with number one, we're gonna start with the property tax puzzle that nobody warns you about. So most people know that Texas has no state income tax. It's pretty common knowledge here. And it's also well known that in Austin, property taxes are high, but they're way more complicated than you might think. And in a second, I'm gonna share what you need to do if you're moving here so you can know exactly what you're getting into when it comes to property taxes. So there's all different taxing entities. There's, Travis County, the city of Austin, the Austin Community College. As you look at your tax breakdown, your tax bill breakdown, you'll see all the different taxing entities and what the tax rate is for each. Here in Austin, those change annually as the city sets those tax rates. So not only is your property value being reassessed each year, but the actual tax rate, which affects how much your taxes will go up or down, is also adjusted. In addition to all the basic tax entities, one you really want to be on the lookout for is a MUD, a municipal utility district. And this could take your neighborhood literally having thousands of dollars more in taxes each year from the neighborhood right across the street that's valued the same as yours. So one thing I highly recommend doing, tax rates, tax values are all public record. So go to the county appraisal district where you're buying. You're probably gonna be buying in the Austin area in Travis, Williamson, or Hayes County. So go to that taxing appraisal district website and look up the address to see what the tax value was of the home you're interested in, or at least get an idea of what the tax rate is in the neighborhood that you're interested in buying in. Now, as a reminder, I run the ian.grossman group here in the Austin area. We cover the greater Austin area, and this is what we do. We walk buyers through this process so you understand the ins and outs of where you're buying and what you're getting into. We do it so there's no surprises after you close. So if you're starting your journey in the Austin area, we highly recommend reach out to our team. We will take you from start to finish through this process. We do a lot of hand holding here when we work with buyers that are new to the Austin area. All the contact info is below, and we'll put a link in the description if you want to schedule a call directly with us. All right, moving right along. When you think of what it's really like living in Austin, you gotta understand the suburbs here have great accessibility. So unlike other major metros, all of the suburbs around Austin are relatively close in, and it does feel like somewhat of a compact city. Let me give you an example. So recently I had two back-to-back builder walkthroughs. I had one in Dripping Springs. Dripping Springs is about as far southwest of Austin as you can get. The other one was up in Hutto. Hutto is one of those suburbs way northeast of Austin, so it feels like opposite ends of the world. But here's the cool part. Mind you, I didn't run into traffic because it was in the middle of the day, but from door to door, Dripping Springs to Hutto, it was 50 minutes. Now, you think of other major cities where people are an hour, 2 hours outside of just the metro, the downtown area, if they live in the suburbs, and Austin is not that way. Now, I will caution you, make sure you understand where you're working in relation to where you're living, because someone that's maybe working at the Domain or up at Dell, which is on the northern part of Austin, wouldn't want to be living in Dripping Springs and do that commute every day. At least I definitely would not want to do that. So that's a cool thing. These suburbs give you affordability without being too far from downtown. You get access. You can come here on the weekends, enjoy the restaurants, enjoy the nature, which we'll get to in just a little bit. So if you want to know more about some of the suburbs in and around Austin, we'll continue to put out videos on this channel, but I recently did one ranking pretty much all the suburbs you've heard of so you can see which one might be a good fit for you. I went way in depth on each of the suburbs, so definitely check that out. And if you're moving here, make sure you check out our free Austin relocation guide. I'm gonna put a QR code right up here on the screen. We'll also put a link in the description. Check that out. It's a great roadmap and free for anyone looking to move to Austin. All right, moving along, next on the list is the airport reality. Now, Austin's airport looks modern, sleek, and to an outsider, looks very nice, but in reality, it is bursting at the seams, and you need to understand that if you're moving here, especially if you like to travel or you just travel a lot for work. So what people complain about the most with our airport is very limited direct flights. You know, we have Houston and we have Dallas nearby. If you're going somewhere far, there's a good chance you're connecting in one of those cities. There's a lot of delays, frequent delays happening with airlines in the Austin airport and parking frustrations, but I'm going to give you a solution for that. Now, here's some exciting news about the Austin airport. They recently started construction on Concourse B, and this is going to expand the airport tremendously. Southwest has put out statements saying that Austin might be their biggest hub, even over Dallas and Houston, which is pretty exciting. I'm a Southwest guy. Now, you gotta understand, this is a project that's not gonna be complete till the early 2030s, so we still have a lot of time until that comes. And when you pull up to the Austin airport right now, you see Concourse A is a construction zone. There's tons of things happening, expansions to that. They're updating areas. And one place that I've seen as a pain point, I have TSA PreCheck, and they narrowed it to where now there's only one TSA PreCheck line in the Austin airport. Super frustrating when you're trying to get through and get to your gate very quickly. Used to be two separate ones on opposite sides of the airport. So little things like that, you're gonna deal with growing pains with Austin airport. And I said I had a quick solution for you. If you don't wanna deal with parking and all the Austin airport parking, they've got those places, you know, the park and fly places where park, pay 10 bucks, they shuttle you to the airport. Fast Park is one of the places that I love. There's a parking spot. There's a few options for that, but I would definitely say that is a better way to deal with parking getting to the airport. To me, it's convenient, it's affordable, and it makes my life easier. All right, moving right along, we've got to recognize that the cost to have fun in Austin is pretty steep. So it's not just housing that is pricey, that's what makes all the headlines in Austin. Going out is costly too. And don't get me wrong, there are so many fun things to do, ways to entertain you and your spouse, you and your kids, but it does come at a cost. I'll give you an example. When I go out downtown with my wife, which we live in Circle C Ranch, and to get downtown, it's less than 15 minutes. So on a date night, we usually find ourselves trying to get into the action, into the mix of things, but it is hard for us to go to dinner for less than $150 to $200. Now, of course, there's cheaper options, but we're not even picking the fanciest, most expensive restaurant. It's just kind of the cost of going out here. You pair that with paying a babysitter $25, $30 an hour. Yes, you heard that right, and it makes for an expensive date night. Another very popular attraction, and I'll go more into this in just a few minutes, but I looked at renting a boat on Lake Travis when my parents were here earlier in August, and I was blown away with how much it cost for a few hours on the boat. It was about $150 per hour just to rent a boat on Lake Travis, and we were looking at a 4-hour rental, 600 bucks. You throw in some food and drinks for the day, and it makes for a pretty expensive day out on the lake. So these high prices, people kind of refer to it as the Austin tax, and it's one of the things that people complain about a lot, saying that Austin has kind of lost its laid-back, casual vibe because of how expensive it is now to have fun. All right, number 5, when you think of the truth about living in Austin, is you gotta understand the lakes and which ones are best. Now, a little tidbit right off the bat, so you know what you're talking about, is that all of these lakes that you hear referred to in Austin, they're actually rivers, but if you get caught calling them rivers, people are gonna give you some funny look. So I'm gonna break down what are probably the 4 most popular lakes in the Austin area, and we're gonna start with Lady Bird Lake. Now, us Austin OGs know it as Town Lake, so if you hear that, understand it's referring to the same thing. And it's actually the lake that's right behind me. This is gonna be the one that runs through downtown Austin. Here's the thing about Lady Bird Lake. Technically, there's no swimming. Well, you will sometimes here and there see people jumping off whatever they're on to go in the water, but overall, it's not the cleanest. You don't really want to be caught swimming here or let your dogs swim in here. But this lake is great for kayaking, for stand-up paddleboarding. You see the UT rowing team here all the time practicing rowing. So that's a really cool thing in the morning. But in the summer, you see the lake flooded with people out doing those types of water sports. Now, one last thing that this lake is great for is the Congress Avenue bats. So during the summer months, I think from like May to October, 6 million plus bats come out from underneath the bridge every single night. It's a cool thing to see. You see it once, you've probably seen it enough. That's kind of my opinion. But you do that on this lake, and it's best to get on a boat. So go on one of the little boat cruises so you're right underneath the bridge and you can look up and see them flying right over your head. It's definitely a cool sight. If you got kids, take them along. All right, next, if you move west, you have Lake Austin. Now, this is known as probably the most luxurious lake where you're gonna find the most luxury houses. We're talking $10, $20, $30 million for houses that are waterfront there that are beautiful mansions. This is the prime real estate, and it's going to be where you're doing a lot of the more active water sports, just regular boating, jet skiing, wake surfing, tubing, all of those types of things. And one thing I always highly recommend, if you go far west enough on Lake Austin, you see Pennybacker Bridge, which is one of the iconic tourist spots, I would say, or sightseeing photo ops in Austin. So definitely get a picture from underneath the Pennybacker Bridge. It always makes for a good one. Now the next lake is absolutely bonkers what we've seen over the last 3 months there. And that's none other than Lake Travis. That's where I told you previously, if you're looking to rent a boat, can get a little pricey. And previously it wasn't as appealing as it is today. Let me share why. Up to about 3 months ago, early in the summer of 2025, the lake was 40% full. Everywhere you looked, there was dry spots. You go over bridges, you see docks just sitting on dry land that used to be waterfront. Well, we've gotten so much rain this summer that the lake is now about 90% filled. For people who have been here over that course of time that have seen the evolution of what the lake now looks like with all that rain, it's absolutely bonkers. But this, again, is a lake that is great if you want to do those fun water sports, the jet skiing, the tubing, the wake surfing. Also, highly recommend, there's a restaurant there called The Oasis that is widely known as a place that doesn't have great food, but has the best views in Austin. Go there during sunset, sit on the patio if you can. Check out the sunset, definitely won't disappoint. And then last but not least, one of the best weekend getaways there is in the Austin area is Lake LBJ. This is in that Marble Falls, Kingsland area. It's a constant level lake, great for, again, those boating sports, water skiing, tubing, wake surfing. When I first moved here, rented a house there and did some paddleboarding and kayaking in some of the canals there, which is really cool to do. But again, if you want to get out of the city, get away an hour door to door from downtown Austin, Lake LBJ is a great spot. All right, I had to move into the shade for this next one because it's getting toasty out here. But number 6, the city is way more fun when its teams are winning. Now let's get a couple things out of the way. Pro sports teams are not really a thing here in Austin. However, a few years ago, we got the Austin FC MLS team. So that's been super exciting for the city. And 2 years ago, they were contenders. They did really well going into the playoffs, and the city rallied behind them. Not to say we're a bunch of bandwagon fans, but they're just a little more buzz. It's just a little more exciting because last year they were duds. They were terrible. I went to a game toward the end of the season and there was basically no one there. But again, it's way more fun when teams like that are doing well. Here's the good thing. The University of Texas fills that gap. And I'm not just talking about football. There's other great sports here, and I'll give you a reason why you should probably just buy into the culture and get involved in just a second. I'm going to come back to UT, but one cool thing is that Austin is home to a couple of farm teams for Major League teams. The Austin Spurs are a basketball team in the Spurs affiliation that they play up in Cedar Park in the Cedar Park Center. Also, you've got the Round Rock Express. They're the Texas Rangers farm team, and it's AAA. So there's times where if you have a Rangers player that's maybe rehabbing or about to hit the majors, they're playing right here in Round Rock. Now, if you really want your pro sports, your major pro sports fixed, you can go down to San Antonio for the Spurs or hit up Houston, which is about a 2.5-hour drive from Austin, or Dallas, which is a 3.5-hour drive. But back to UT. So one of the really cool things about living here is that, again, it's not just football. You've got basketball, baseball, soccer, volleyball, and it wasn't really until I had kids that I truly just decided to bite the bullet, embrace the culture, and get involved, and the kids absolutely love it. I love taking my girls to the women's basketball games, not just because it's women's, but it's a little bit less rowdy than the men's game. It's a little bit easier to get tickets, but the last couple of years, the women's team has been really good, so you'd be surprised. The stadium can start rocking, but one of the cool things is after the game, they let the kids come and meet the players. They sign autographs. It's way more interactive. If you're not into basketball, the volleyball team is really good here. I like those indoor sports where you're not subject to the weather here in Austin. And then the spring, going to a UT baseball game is always a fun thing to do, especially if you have kids. So when I'm filming this, approaching the fall of 2025, University of Texas is ranked the #1 team in the nation right now. We'll see how long that lasts. There's high hopes for a national championship. That would set this city on fire. Hopefully not literally, figuratively, but people are waiting for it. They're begging for it. And who knows, Arch Manning could be that ticket to sending this city into a frenzy as they maybe get a national championship at the beginning of 2026. All right, next one on the list is understanding the stress of water, power, and drought. It kind of sounds like, you know, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Well, this is the Austin version of that. Behind the sunshine and pretty much beautiful weather throughout most of the year, you see brown lawns, water restrictions, power grid stress, and boil water notices. Now you might be thinking, what are some of those things he just said? That makes zero sense to me. Well, I'll give you a little insight. Watering restrictions are super common here in the summer, especially when we're not seeing a lot of rain. Now, luckily, we've seen rain over the last couple summers, but it's very common to be driving around your neighborhood and see watering restrictions for your lawn set throughout different times of the year to make sure that the city doesn't run out of water. And for those boil water notices, yes, it's a thing. I've experienced it multiple times since I've lived here, and it's inevitable. If you're here long enough, you're gonna experience it too. Usually when the weather gets super cold and we start seeing freezes, all of a sudden we start noticing that these water treatment plants shut down or they're not functioning properly. This triggers the city to send out a boil water notice. Basically, they say, do not drink any water until it's been boiled. This happened during a couple of the big freezes in the early 2020s, and luckily it hasn't happened in a few years, but you always know that people are kind of waiting for that winter time to come to see if anything wacky like that is gonna take place. So this is something that those outsiders don't really think about, especially those of you that are coming maybe from the Midwest or the Northeast who experience winters, snow, freezes, and it's not a big deal. It's just part of the year. Well, when you come to Austin, you got to be prepared to deal with some of these things you've never heard of before. All right, before we move on to number 8, which is one that could drastically impact your health if you don't pay attention to it, so stick around for that. I want to remind you, I run the Fenton Grossman Group here in the Austin area. We cover all of Greater Austin and help people like you that are relocated to the area, so you know what in the world to do once you decide you want to make the move here. So reach out. Our contact info is below. It's also going to be in the description of this video. Now let's move on to number 8. All right, number 8. We're talking allergies on steroids, AKA cedar fever. Now you're probably wondering, what in the world is cedar fever? And unfortunately, if you live here long enough, you might find out the hard way. Typically in the winter, around December to February timeframe, cedar season comes in, the weather's dry, the winds are blowing, and you get hit with what seems like way more than a cold. In some cases, seems like you're absolutely coming down with the flu. And if this happens to you, rest assured, there's a good chance that you're experiencing cedar fever. So when people complain about the summer heat, and I just mentioned it earlier in the video because I'm experiencing it this second, I like to think ahead and know what's coming this winter. Now, luckily, I haven't suffered too bad from cedar fever since I've lived here. My wife, on the other hand, it hits her like a ton of bricks pretty much every year, and I see people all over the place. You kind of see that there's that look, like it almost looks like people just got in a boxing match with Mike Tyson. They just feel defeated, they're droopy, they feel sluggish. Cedar fever. Now, one scary part is sometimes you live here for a few years before you ever experience it, and it kind of like creeps up behind you and haunts you with this, like, is it gonna happen this year? And that's how I felt the first several years I lived here. Again, luckily, I haven't gotten hit too hard by it, but one thing that kind of rolls around in the spring is that oak pollen. Those allergies are really bad too. That's kind of like pollen in any other region, where lots of runny noses, itchy eyes, and it could also wipe you out for a good bit of time. So if you're someone who gets wiped out by allergies, who has a tough time with that kind of thing, make sure to spend some time here in the winter in Austin, because it could make or break your decision of whether you want to actually plant roots here and live in the ATX. So that's the real Austin, the stuff you won't find on travel blogs, relocation guides, the things the locals don't always want to talk about. But you gotta understand, living here can be incredible if you know what you're getting into. That's why when we work with buyers, we walk you through all of this, the hidden costs, the lifestyle trade-offs, and the neighborhood insights, so you can make the smartest move. If you're thinking about making that move to Austin, reach out to the team. We'd love to help you. Hope this video was helpful. Catch you on the next one.